Hi, Pavel. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you there?
Very good, very good. As better as one can be in this situation. But now, with the passage of time, I think everybody is sinking into the reality. Uh, so very well. You're back home. Some people are stuck between office and home.
Yeah, and it's like you and me are lucky. We at least like close to where we live, and I know many people who stuck abroad and who can't return, and
Yeah,
that's definitely like
yeah.
not the best situation. And I guess how many people lost their money, like by affecting the business plans. So
True,
yeah,
true.
okay. So I think everybody who wanted to join live video has joined. I'll do like a very short intro of us. So my name is Pavel Kravchenko. I'm co-founder of Distribute Lab. We do these webinars together with Hub. The aim is to provide like cutting edge knowledge, provide like conversation with the best speakers, with people who know what they do, with very solid people. And I trust your opinion very well. And I know you for a long time, so I know that you're doing great things. So today we wanted to talk with you about how you see the new world like adapting to like a new reality. I know that you've been managing like hundreds of people, and you definitely, and now too, and definitely you face these challenges like as no one else. So it would be very interesting to hear your experience about the new HR practices, about new like guidelines to manage business continuity, about like what business should adapt, how new practices like, and some like role of blockchain maybe. Yeah. So
Sure, sure.
please
Uh,
introduce yourself. Yeah, and we'll go.
yeah, so my name is Zubair. I've been in the business for about 28 years, largely in banking, on the consumer side of technology, where I've been involved in many leadership roles within the technology part, starting as a programmer myself many years ago, which, if all given, that first year was the best year of my life because I used to create things. And then obviously the things changed. And uh, currently, I'm the general manager for Veripark, covering the Middle East and Africa region. We deal with the banking products for banks. We have 51 banking clients in the region. So we're serving that. So, Pavel, regarding your thought process, right? So it's very important for us to understand the macro picture. And for me, while this COVID-19 situation unraveled, it was uh, it was a new thing, right? We're never engineered, never prepared, never educated for to deal with something like this. So there was a lot of self-reflection that went into, and I kind of broke it down into 3 or 4 pieces at the highest level, which I would like to share before I get into the business part of it, because the human part needs to be understood for us to relate to that, at least for me. So the first and foremost, my heart went out to the enormous pain that this thing has caused for people who got affected, families who lost loved ones, people who went through that pain and then succumbed to it. Uh, so we should remember that and remember those souls in our prayers, and may they rest in peace. And people who are affected by it now, hope they fight back without the right medicine or treatment available. So that's the first reality from a human perspective. It happened in our watch, so to speak, when we were on the planet, and it's extremely sad and tragic situation. The second piece, my heart goes out to the heroes. So the heroes emerge like in any crisis, though you have a lot of uh, destruction, disruption, but then you have a lot of opportunity and a lot of heroism that comes about. And clearly, the first responders, people who left their families on a daily basis, went out in the line of fire, in the room of danger, and they're doing it day in, day out. The doctors, nurses, the lab technicians, the ambulance drivers. And really, I don't think that the world has thanked them enough, and many of them have paid the ultimate price themselves. So we should think of that heroic effort as well. And the third element is heroism of a different kind, where in lockdowns, where everything was closed and people like yourself and me were able to enjoy the comfort of our home and safety. And we wouldn't have been if those delivery boys, those uh, 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 people carrying packages, carrying food from one place to the other, carrying medicines and deliveries and so forth. So that, I think, is another workforce which is least mentioned um, uh, from that perspective. And finally, the fourth one is ourselves, as to where we were shown how to lower our pace and really reason with this at a human level. So this is a start reflection for me on the COVID-19 perspective as to how it hit the world. Then I also started thinking about it, that it kind of hit us, this kind of a pandemic, 100 years later, right? So there's no precedence. One of the reasons why we can't contemplate, and it took us by surprise in many ways, is because it happened so many years ago. Now, if you look at the situation, the way it spread in back in 1918, the Spanish flu, the last pandemic, it was at the time of the World War One was ending. The second wave really started and shot up because all the soldiers went back home. At that time, the transportation, the linking of the human element was far inferior than it is today. So from all counts, the world today is extremely connected, and yet that's good news and that's bad news. Good news in terms of so many things. Countries are easing on visa regulations. Multiple countries are giving one visa. Many passports do not require a visa. Uh, you can catch a flight whenever you want. You can book it online. Blah blah blah. All that has created a movement like never before. So I don't think my point here is, I don't think that this will be the only pandemic that we see in our lives. There's a high chance that in our lifetime, in this generation, we will see it again, possibly once or twice more, which means that we can't leave this problem or the business issues on our mind to be solved by the next generation. I think it's our duty to address them, and many things, right? Medical science, number of areas, those solutions have to come in our time. So that's a second piece. Uh, and then we talk about the third piece is as to how this will change the businesses. And I don't know, Pival, what you have seen so far, but in the last 10 weeks of lockdown, some businesses have completely ran out of fuel. Some industries have realized that they cannot revert back and turn around. Uh, and a very small percentage has reacted uh, to the usage of tools and facilities and alternative methods, but mainstream business is stalled. Uh, One of the fears that I have is that people might still hold up and take a vacation and think that this is going to go away. But I don't think it would go away if it was not the new normal. I think it's a new normal. There are various people in the industry talking about both ways, both sides of the argument. We are all speculating with some calculated guess. But my reasoning around it being new normal is what I mentioned earlier, that we are so well connected. The world is highly populated than ever before. We have all the recipes for this to happen again if we don't learn from this one. So in that case, businesses have to really remodel themselves. So right now we are in stage, most of the businesses are in a stage of survival. Companies such as industries such as banks um, who are serving mass, people at mass, are trying to go beyond this curve or lockdown and so forth. But my thoughts go to the first board meeting, right? And we can ask ourselves, what will happen in the first board meeting? Everybody returns, maybe the first wave, second wave, whatever waves are over, and they're sitting on this table and they're asking themselves that, guys, what do we do now? How do we protect ourselves from this? It's almost like a company who kept on reading about cyber attacks and information security for life. And last night they got severely hacked. and this morning there's a hurdle of senior management, right? Suddenly, cybersecurity is at the top of their agenda. All the funding will get stopped here, but will not get stopped here. It will actually get increased because they want protection. So the human instinct, right? You get into the survival mode. So I think most of the businesses will start questioning that were we ever prepared for business continuity, uh, and how do we go about that? And Pavel, just stop me if you have a point to add or question. But I wanted to talk about the business continuity aspect of businesses now.
Yeah, and before you proceed, I would ask you about the such component as fear, because this is the primary outcome of any crisis. When people experience fear and they just paralyzed and they sometimes don't know what to do, and very often it results into like total inaction. So they just can't do anything. They just scared. So how do you think how large the fear component is exactly right now?
So I think it depends from country to country. In my view, I think it is directly proportional. So the fault is common, the attack is common, but the reaction is different. And every country, every region has taken it differently. When I talk about UAE, I think we're very lucky to be here because we've seen some unique leadership in terms of attempting, making available the tests, drive-through tests, coming in just 2-3 weeks down when the COVID reality started, and a number of things. So if you have a good support system, you have good stimulus from the government, you have good backing on the economic policies, you have a basic human right coverage, and a good, obviously a good healthcare system, which is transparent, government being transparent in terms of what's happening. And then you as a citizen, you comply, right? You comply to the rightful rules, you understand the situation, you make up your mind. You also see that people who don't comply, who possibly exhibit unreasonable and endanger others, are also, handled in a way where, they won't be able to damage anyone. So then your fear subsides. Then you feel that, what, the only fear I have is to, survive this period. And then that absence of fear creates a energy around what can I do? How do I develop? So I've been invited to speak in some of the technology companies' motivation talks, and this is what I've been telling. And people have been asking me that, Zubair, what do we do? We have time. How do we do it? We should just wait. Should we acquire a new skill? So many things could be done. So many people I know started writing the book. And I know, Pavel, you have written, you're a man of books yourself. But there was a thought in mind, that a dream that, at some point of time, I'll get to a point where I will write a book. And so people started. So absence of fear is happening. But having said that, in some countries, it's the other way around, because of those necessary enablements are missing. And so this anxiety and fear is growing. And that's a negative energy, right? Because all said and done, we are under the cloud of a dark force right now. It's the entire planet. What has happened from a pandemic perspective is extremely negative, and giving energy to negativity will only increase negativity. So I think it's extremely vital for us to find means of fighting this fear, eradicating it, and then thinking positive.
Okay, let's switch to the business continuity, like how businesses should react, and like what they should plan ahead, which actions, which maybe new relationships, new like supply chains, or just what kind of structure should be the business of in this reality.
Sure. So let's understand the problem first, right? So, and I'll take an industry, the one that I'm largely associated with is FSI, financial services. So I'll try to stick to the area of my comfort, so to speak. But many of the things apply to other industries as well. So if you look at banks, right? So there are about 4 components of stakeholders. within the way how a bank functions. So let's try to understand that, and I'll tell you about continuity right after. So the bank has to is alive to service customers, and the customers are the ones that make money for the bank. So customers is a community. So for customers, bank has created number of touch points to serve the customers. Uh, in some countries, very popular touch point is the branch itself, a physical brick and mortar where a customer walks in, meets clients and stuff. None of those elements were designed for COVID-19, right? It was the queuing system, the way you sit. It was never physical distancing, was never part of the design of a physical structure. Just to give you an example. So customers is one point. Then the second one is staff, employees of a bank. From a business continuity perspective, if you think about it, our staff mechanism, in fact, in the last 5 to 7 years of promoting agile methodologies and Scrum, Kanban, we actually brought people together. We realized that let's break the walls, the separations, even between the cubicles, let's remove the partition so that we see each other, we relate to each other. We never thought that someone would sneeze at the end of the corridor and everybody else will get exposed. So that's a change in thinking from a staff perspective. The third element is the vendors and partners. And so banks are heavy customers of technology. They really use technology for enablement. And just imagine that a extremely critical piece of software that the bank is working on and is requiring it to function properly on a daily basis, on every second, falls down, something happens. And the vendor actually, because of COVID-19, the vendor or the partner doesn't have the right practices. They have their own issues with their customers, their suppliers, their staff. Hence, banks' business continuity is gone out of the window. So that is the third element to think about. And the fourth one is the suppliers. So these are not your typical knowledge capital vendors. They are your operational capital vendors. So they run around for you. They help you with things that you chose to outsource. You realized as a bank that this is not my core competence. I would have someone else do it. This could be printing checks and delivering them. It could be a number of things. Cash replenishment in ATMs is then done. Security guards for our facilities. We are not a security company, so we give it away to someone. But just imagine a security guard company and how the COVID-19 impacts them, because they are physical contact kind of a business. Just imagine if the security guard company cannot fulfill its duty to replenish an ATM, right? The technology is working, the bank is working, the call center is there, there's no physical cash. And if the cash is there, it's tainted, so they have not really followed the prevention practices as per the pandemic. So these four elements are typically there for any industry, but focusing on banks. So what I'm thinking is that when the board members return and go through this reflection of their own in terms of get over the survival mode, so to speak, that everybody is in terms of serving the clients. When they get to a point where they sit and they say, okay, how do we avoid this in the future? They question their business continuity, which was largely designed on having a disaster recovery. So if you're running your systems on one box, can I have another one? It used to be active passive. Now can I have active active? It used to be next to each other. Now can I have it 100 kilometers away? Why 100 kilometers away? Because earthquake usually doesn't strike in two places at the same time. Flooding doesn't happen in such a big region at the same time. In effect, the old philosophy of disaster was lightning doesn't strike in the same intensity in multiple places at the same time. That all has been refuted. COVID-19 is a lightning that has struck at every inch of this land, and it is spread by the very people who, we are actually spreading it. We are the cause of the spread as humans. So this situation is very unique. So then understanding that, they move towards a typical bank, typical company would move towards understanding as to how and what would be the new business continuity practices. And that would include basically reformatting at the architecture level, how the business architecture is, and also huge emphasis on technology architecture when it comes to banks. So from a business architecture level perspective as to, are we covered with the right pandemic oriented mitigations? And I believe a lot of thought process will go through. Given the first reasons why this pandemic can happen again are also the same reasons why we will fight it better than ever, because we are all connected, we have all the brains, we have the largest amount of people in the world at this time, and so forth. So I think that innovation is going to happen on a survival piece in the coming days. On the technology front, banks will also realize that originally when they created channels for interaction for customers, it was also, in a way, it was from nice to have. In a way, it was coming from a place where, customer can, at the end of the day, he can go to the branch in daytime. But in the night, if he needs to transact, let me give him internet banking. And then over time, these channels got enriched. But now, so they were never designed from a continuity perspective. They were designed from a facility perspective. So I give more facilities to my clients, and now my clients are moving to mobile, so I'll give more. So what happens today, I don't know about in your part of the world, Pival, but at least here in this region, we have a lot of onboarding, open the account in 20 minutes and so forth. But the reality remains that 90% of the bank's business has to be done through call center or branch. You literally have to land up in a branch, declare who you are with your documents, and then once your identity is verified physically, and then things start. So now, how do you open accounts in this kind of a scenario? So banks will realize that the platforms and channels that they had created were never created in this new pandemic reality, where I have nothing and I'm still running the bank from mobile. And only a few banks that come to my mind who are mobile only. And they were designed for mobile only. They never wanted to have a back office, never wanted to have a branch or distribution network. Hence, they made everything simple, everything STP from design. So those are the ones that win. Otherwise you do patching. So that's why this whole technology architecture discussion is going to open up, which is going to be interesting, because then in the course of this year and possibly next, you will see some changes coming about. And those models which were not getting mainstreamed, like video conferencing, has been there for years, but was not getting mainstreamed. Like work from home was not getting mainstreamed. I think, and those pieces will get pushed.
Okay, so you'll envision that, like, the slogan "everything online" will like conquer the world. And when it's online, we have online banks in Ukraine too, like which don't have any branches. The only one bank. But you still have the call centers, you still have the chat support. So do you think all the stuff will be distributed on the back office, provide the services? I was asking you what will be the architecture of the backend systems?
Yeah. So from that perspective, it depends on how the service visioning is done. So I ideally light, and I think in all respects, most of the advanced banks in this region were moving towards that already. So they were running digital transformation programs where back offices are basically becoming thin, because you expose all the services at the front, you create a lot of reusability in your architecture. So a lot of data is actually used within the company which has been acquired, and not coming from a design principle of customer would only say the story once. Right? Why does a customer has to show his passport, his identity multiple times on multiple products with the same bank? And for that matter, for any other bank as well, because we have bureaus and other common entities. So I think those kind of things will happen. Things like eKYC, where if a know your customer process has been executed by one bank in the region, why other bank cannot just buy it, that as a service, and get away with it. So you will see a reduction, natural reduction happening in there. And obviously the reduced staff can become a workforce for upskilled elements in the future for some other area. But I think the challenge strategy will have to be really challenged in terms of understanding. I'll give you an example. One of our clients, uh, uh, really a very big bank, 1,000+ branches, fairly advanced in their technology. And I'll tell you why. Because you really find out whether you're advanced when you really have to, act.
Mhm.
They got a couple of COVID-19 deaths in their premises. Their staff, unfortunately, passed away. One of them was a security guard. And rapidly overnight, they had to revamp, because in this campus where 2, 3, 4,000 people were coming in every day, everybody's at risk. Now, what do you do about your customers? So what they did was they realized that they were very well positioned, even to a level where their single telephone number, call center number, can
Mhm.
be routed to 1,000, 2,000 mobile phones through a queuing strategy.
Mhm.
So they had all that thought through for whatever reason. And so as a result of that, all their call center agents started working from home just the very next day, using their personal devices, iPads, iPhones, other phones, laptops, and actually not only answering calls, but
Mhm.
actually doing transactions for the customers. So they are helping them do the transaction. They're mimicking their screens and stuff. So we personally took a little bit of pride in that, because it was part of our technology working for them as well at that level. But generally, I think that kind of architecture comes through a lot of investment and a lot of pain through the years. You can't just uh, develop it. Now, this used to be the thinking, but in
Mhm.
survival mode, humankind has been known to do a lot faster. So I think now going into survival mode, in the next maybe 2 or 3 quarters, I think we will see stuff done which traditionally was taking 5 years to do.
It's interesting. Before, I wanted to ask you about the then security issues of such like people distribution. But before we go proceed into this, you've mentioned the eKYC. And people think in a way that like, okay, if one bank does the procedures, then others should not do it because the one already have done it. But basically, if we have all the documents signed with digital signature, then it might be even more simplified,
Yeah.
because it's the government who provides the data about the person. It's like who the person is, the passport or ID, where a person lives, it's the government registry anyway. How much taxes he or she paid, also it's like a government information, and so on and so forth. So there are many like, so most of the documents required for the KYC is a government data. It's not basically, it shouldn't be the customer um, providing them. It's more like a bank asks the government, okay, is this guy or girl okay? If yes, then we KYC. But IML, yeah, it's rather a dynamic procedure which will happen, per transaction. But the KYC, I think it should be completely transferred to basically to the digital signature and the government access to government registries. Then it will be much, much simpler. I think the government put the KYC question to banks because it just didn't want to, in many countries, didn't want to be responsible for like data protection or whatever, something like that.
Yeah. No, and banks, rightly so, are at the forefront of the financial industry. But the same problem exists for brokerage houses. The same problem is for stock exchanges, right? Imagine a person traveling from a country A to country B, and the first thing he or she wants to do is to trade. There's $1 million in his hand, he wants to trade,
Yeah.
right? You cannot. You need to have a banking account, then you have a brokerage association, and then you talk about signing up with the stock exchange. So that's why banks become the common denominator. But your point is valid, Pavel, that uh, identity verification and where the money is coming from, anti-money laundering, and those kind of uh, policies are there for the right reasons, right? It helps us build the right community from what has happened before this. It protects consumer at large, and that's why the regulators and central bank really enforce it heavily. Uh, but the way we implemented it in the past days is not the way I'm expecting the banks to implement it going forward. Uh, just recently, with Smart Government Dubai, uh, we've concluded six banks in a consortium has concluded working pilot of KYC, eKYC, which has been done in Singapore and other places. Many other places have done that using a company using the blockchain technology, right? So the whole concept is very simple. Any of the banks can modify it. Monetization of services can happen over time. Uh, and audit trails exist, security is there, uh, uh, the regulators themselves can check it on their own and so forth. So it kind of satisfies all parameters, and why wouldn't you do it? And this is why I think the network of trust that is missing, right? Any transaction, any business network in which trust element is missing, I think these elements will start getting felt like this. Just excuse me for a bit. Let me.
Yeah, the network of trust is super important, and it obviously ties to blockchain, where it allows you to create like a registry of all identities or without any private data, or registry of all transactions or something like anything else, and then rely on the past and rely on the present, and with the usage of smart contracts rely on the future events that you agreed on. So that indeed is part of the answer. Blockchain cryptography in a digital world, I usually provide the example is like, you cannot trust digital data now because you cannot as a person verify this data. The only way to verify the data is to sign it digitally and to like send it with the digital signature. And only then the recipient can be sure that it's you who sent them, because digital signature is there. The data wasn't corrupted, and the data has a timestamp that blockchain can help with. Without blockchain, you cannot achieve really secure timestamping, and that's also very important, especially in like trading. And so basically, this tool we already have, and now we just need to rethink the philosophy. Like, okay, digital world, how do we create systems that have the security by design? The example that you provided with the call center is a very interesting example, because that's where the flexibility comes from the one perspective, but the security holes is from another perspective, because it's easy to hack the the cellular operator and to substitute the phone number and to call to another, and then the guy, if as you mentioned, the bank staff is doing transactions for the client, then it's a straight way to the problem, because at some point there won't be a bank staff but the hacker who will do transactions in charge of users, and as for user it would seem as if they are signing a proper transaction. It's just the hacker will add 1 0 and that's it. And basically you need to employ completely different mechanisms, like with cryptographic, with multi-signature, where the client should sign a loan for the small transactions with digital signature. If they need to initiate bigger transaction, they got the SMS or any kind of other two-factor. And if they need to initiate even larger transaction, they have a call to a bank staff member. And then again, the bank staff has to use the key as well, but the user sees which transaction they're signing. Because right now it's like I tell, please send $1,000 to my account, and on the other end of the line they can put 1 million, right? And that would be an issue. But everything will be recorded correctly, and the visit to the bank may be also an option, because imagine that if everybody is remote, then definitely the bad guys won't be remote. They will come to you, they will put a gun and say like, please initiate this transaction. And since you are not in the bank office anymore, it's how
You don't
would
have to
you
protect.
prove that it's you initiating this transaction? And the bank staff will not know this. So there might be something like a courier comes to you and verifies that you really in a safe condition, and you won't really initiate this big transaction or sell your house. So there won't be many to the security protocol and the structure and the like even architecture of systems. There must be the security principles embedded.
True, true. The other thing that is happening, Pavel, is on the banking footprint, right? So there are some systems that the banks have used for a while, but within those systems, there are some intrinsic functionality that they would now need based on the pandemic aspect. So what you've seen is the government stimulus that have been given in many of the governments, and in order to uphold the economy, supporting the small businesses, delaying payment periods, restructuring loans, and so forth. So now, government paying for someone else's loan is quite a new reality in some of the markets. So, for instance, a collection system, a typical collection system of a bank, will now have to undergo. Just imagine now, I have to reach out to 1 million customers and restructure their loans because the government has just given me this secondment. And worst case, in this physical distancing world, I'm calling them to the branch, right? Can't happen. So it has to be digitally oriented. So digital channels, we've always been thinking about how to acquire a customer, how to transact, onboarding, digital onboarding, and so forth. But there are a lot of digital servicing aspects that will come to the forefront in the coming few days on that front. You want to move on to the HR aspects? We started with the human aspects, people, but I think there's a. So I think on the for every company, right? We in the last 5 or 7 years, the philosophy on the people's leadership and the HR aspects have really taken a lot of interest from a whole lot of people, especially in the senior management, and has cultivated into or converted into good benefits for the companies. And companies have grown who regard their people as a force. Now, based on that, the engagement practices of the old times, which was all about bringing people together, let's have food, let's eat together, let's celebrate together. Celebrating success was in relation to giving someone, a certificate or a gift by hand and so forth. So all those things have to be really rethought as well. And though digital tools have been always available of awarding points, creating a mechanism of reward virtually, again is an area which I think is just gonna, it's a great place to invest if you're an investor, because those tools are really gonna go up. Because, and even when we go back, because this is the new normal. So even we go back, we would have found a better way of doing the same thing. So from an HR perspective, there are many opportunities of that kind. Right now, we are one of the companies. As a company, we found ourselves, again going back to self-reflection. We found ourselves to be quite ready. Being a technology company, we were on the bare bone infrastructure perspective, quite up there. We have a single highest class of laptop for everybody in the company, regardless of the role or profile, and that really helped. That call taken years ago really helped. So we actually went into a self-imposed lockdown 10 days prior to the government. And it came from a place of really, can we help the government by taking people off the road? Because this thing, we could read it, this thing is only going to get worse with time, unless we really do something different. So in our second week is when the announcements of harsher lockdowns came about. But by that time, we realized that we were more productive than ever. And that was a realization, because before that we had a fear that how people will use it, misuse it, and so forth. So similar to that, the HR practices has to get modernized. That thinking and the strategic HR thinking has to be modernized as to how. See, you get value when you show value. trust is gained by giving trust, right? So those elements have to come about in the HR practices at the strategic level, and then slowly over time gets translated into operational manuals. So right now we are doing our HR rule books, HR policy manuals. We're really critically looking at it and incorporating these elements related to retention of staff, engagement of staff. How do we recruit people? And we are one of the companies who's recruiting in multiple countries at this time as well. But how do you go about that? And how do you employ tools which basically ease your assessment procedures? We used to do physical evaluation tests for technical staff. We used to psychometric that they have to come and meet an agent and get this done. All that we are shipping it to the automated tools that are there. There are a lot of AI analysis elements that we are started using, and none of that is created by us. Why should I create it? It's an outsource, it's someone else's core competence, and I will just buy it. So we are doing that. So I think companies more and more will move into a very broader HR mechanism, and if HR mechanisms improve, so will the life of our people, right? We will be able to keep talent. We will be able to grow the right people in the right direction, which is not the norm. It's not available in every industry. Some industries are very lucky to have it, and we have references to some good organizations in the world that are doing it. But what is the rocket science there? Why can't everybody do it? It's very human oriented, and we are born human, right? This is a core competence. We had it at birth. I don't even have to buy a software to become human, right? So, but why are we not able to do this right? So I think in the next 3 quarters, a lot of emphasis will go there, and things will move faster here as well.
Yeah, indeed. Like we also hired like 6 people recently, and they fully online and from Spain to Indonesia. That was an interesting experience. Definitely. Okay, so what I would like to discuss is the last topic before we end. Is like your opinion about like blockchain. We briefly touched this, but maybe you see certain perspective that you want to share. And I encourage everybody to put questions in the chats. So we can.
Yeah, sure, Pavel. Again, so the spirit of this conversation has been the new normal forces us to think differently, not from a place of fear, but from a place of liberation. And that we went through, taking banks as an example, IT companies, HR practices, and so forth. I think the same thing is around blockchain. Because if you think about it, people, you and I, being the student of the subject and with our interest, and I know your achievements in the field are remarkable, have been talking about it, right? It makes sense, but it has never been taken by some of the regions in the world in mainstream. And regulation hurdles, maturity on compliance front, maturity on risk management front, and so forth has kind of limited that. But I think now you have a problem for which the solution is sought. Sometimes you have a beautiful solution and you go around the world looking for a problem to solve. Though in the Bitcoin era, blockchain was a great solution to that problem and so forth, and we used it non-value based applications quite well. As I said, in Dubai, we'll be launching, I think the government will be launching, the banks consortium will be launching the eKYC system on blockchain very soon. But I'm predicting that in the next few months, the application of blockchain would come about in areas that we actually did not think earlier at all. And it will be driven by the mode of trust rather than how easy a seamless experience and so forth. It would be linchpin on the element of trust because that's what's going to get thinner now with the physical distancing becoming the norm. And I think it will stay a norm for a while. Obviously, let the vaccine come in whenever it comes in, what happens next. But 2-3 years down, going back to my earlier introduction when I gave, that this won't be the only pandemic that we see in our lives. I think we'll see more. So by virtue of that, the physical distancing will. If you notice, Pavel, I'm not calling it social distancing because socially here we are connected as before. So I think the term needs some correction there. But I think blockchain will have some real new applications coming out. Well, what are your views about it?
Yeah, this is like for me, as I already said, it's more like the mechanism that provides trust. So people assign to blockchain many capabilities, but the like bottom line is that it provides you with the ability to store data and synchronize the data. And which data you don't care.
Yeah.
So it definitely will be used in any case where people communicate and they cannot trust each other fully. And obviously, if people have social distant, then they cannot trust 100% because it's electronic communication. Now with the coming of deep fake technology, the video and the audio, then you should have the cryptographic techniques to prove that. And then there comes a lot of tools that people haven't heard about, like public key infrastructure, even though there's a long time in the market and other things.
Good. Interesting times ahead.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Yeah, we see actually, we as a business see more incoming projects. Maybe for a reason people realized, okay, the IT is the only way forward. It's like, obviously, you either need to run the grocery shop, right, or to be in IT, because everything will be there. And I expect that the game economy will like flourish soon. And game economy will flourish only when you have the um, ownership concept in there too. Now the game is just like a game that comes and ends. But as soon as we will have game, we already have them, but it's still okay. As soon as most of the games will be interconnected and you have a private ownership, then it will be changed. The whole concept of wealth will move there. So, because when you sit at home, you cannot anymore show off your new watch or a new dress, right? You don't have an opportunity, and obviously you have to show off your wealth some other way. And the basic requirements of a person are very low. It's just you need to have a food and the place to stay. And the rest of the economy comes from features that bring emotions. And now emotions will come from the digital world. So we see already concerts coming in games. We see that some parties and conversations and everything goes digital. So it's definitely will be exciting times. Yeah, we like our generation. Honestly, it's not prepared for that. We still think in a physical world. We still think in a person-to-person communication, not avatar to avatar. And maybe you see it on Facebook now is getting their avatar. I think it's a clear movement.
Yeah. No, but I think people, what the last few years have taught us is that humans are excellent at adaptation, right? We adapt. That's one of our natural instincts, but we don't necessarily have the motivation to adapt.
Mm-hmm.
And motivation being a mission in life to do something good or possibly solve a problem. So being a problem at hand, usually the motivation has been to solve the problem. Problem this, how do you solve it? And so I think adaptability, I would bank on it. This is why I think things will change faster in the coming months, at least 2 to 3 quarters. 2 to 3 quarters is my prediction. I think by Q1 next year, we'll look back and there's going to be so much to write about and so many movies to be made.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, Zubair. Unfortunately, I need to go soon. So thanks a lot for this insightful conversation. You know what? Many people maybe noticed that people from different cultures and different regions, they have different perspective of looking at things. And this is like, if you talk to a European guy, that will be different. Like I've got a few insights that I wouldn't think of, and you brought this perspective to me, and that was really interesting. And I will have something to think about.
Good. You're welcome.
Thanks for your time. I know it's very valuable. So thanks for agreeing for this interview. Yeah, hopefully we'll like interact more and do some business. Yeah.
Sure thing. Have a good day.
Reality. Yeah.
Sure. Look forward to that. Bye-bye all.
Okay. Thanks for your participation. A good day.